Do you ever feel guilty about how much money you have and how little other people have?
A lot of people would say you should do it with the money that you make from your music. You should reprocess it into your art and make more functional art and everything like that. And I've given this great consideration, and there's been a lot of telemetry on my part when being involved with questions along this kind of line, and apropos of an answer towards this sort of an indigent philosophy, I would just invariably have to say on behalf of Van Halen, and more particularly myself, you. So it's like, I'm not going to sit here in silence. Who's got a thing? Who's got a fucking question? Come on.
Surely somebody wants to know how David feels the first time in Sweden?
Why is it funny? Listen, you just want to take pictures, I'll stand on the dance floor for you. I don't care.
Big smile, right?
Why is Van Halen the most successful heavy metal band today?
I don't think Van Halen is heavy metal. I think that's the reason we've gotten the success that we have beyond most normal levels of heavy metal. Songs like Jump, stuff like Big Bad Bill or Ice Cream Man don't even approximate really even rock and roll. I think a lot of people listen only to the volume that the music happens at, and they see the most common symbols of rock and roll, which is like the guitar and the big drum set, and they never get beyond that.
Are you living a rock and roll lifestyle?
You create your own planet here. You make your own customs. You have your own society. It's like a combination of the circus and the Foreign Legion and you name it. And you get that whole entourage to go around the world. In the United States, we travel maybe 75, 80 people. It's like it has its own slang, and it's like a lot of people think of it, they say, well, Dave, that's really a lot like a family. And I would say, well, I prefer to think of it as a gang.
David, the things we do on stage when you have your monologues and things and talk to people, I saw you at the Castle Donington when you showing off that thing, when the guy throws the bottle up on stage, I'm going to fuck your girlfriend and everything. Is it rehearsed, or is it the same thing from gig to gig?
Well, when you get somebody fooling around in the audience, you know, ever since the old days of vaudeville and show business, you know, you've got certain lines, you know, that you're going to drop on somebody. This isn't punk rock, you know, and sometimes the audience gets a little bit beside itself. That's all right. They can reserve that for Motley Crue or AC/DC, you know. I've got all the respect in the audience, all the respect in the world for the audience, and I only expect that to come back around, you know. Somewhere along the line, somebody said, wow, this is going to be fun to throw things around. So you got a couple funny lines that you drop on them, and that usually cuts it back a little bit. Whenever you come to the bar, you tell stories, you know. You get your best stories, you get your best lines, you know. And if you can get somebody to laugh right off the bat, then they're going to suspend their disbelief and at least have a little bit better time.
What happened with the waitress in London?
Those are my best lines, man. Yeah. Don't give them away early.
Do you plan to do any live recording?
Van Halen records basically live in the studio already. You can count the number of overdubs on one hand on any given album. That's not that to say that the opposite is wrong. It's just for Van Halen, we're too lazy. It's got to be spontaneous. You get it once, you get it on the second time, third time, you didn't get it, come back tomorrow. When you hear the stuff live, it sounds better because you have the percussive feel to it, as opposed to just listening to something from a stereo or a Walkman. You have the percussive feeling because the sound is much bigger.
How about the tension between you and Eddie, your cooperation? I read some stories. For instance, from The Last Musician interview, remember that one? That you two had some tension between you.
Quote it, let me answer to it.
I don't remember the exact words, but there was something about the tension between you and Eddie.
There's no tension between Eddie and I. We've been together almost 12 years now. It's just we have two completely different personalities.
Yeah.
Everything that you find Edward listening to on his cassettes, you'd never find in my bag. The music that I listen to is all Motown. It's all old Motown. It's old stacks of Otis Redding and, you know, all the old black stuff, country western, reggae. These are things Edward never, ever listens to. What he listens to is fusion, things of a more eclectic nature, you know, jazz rock, supersonic jazz, whatever you want to call it. These are things you'll never find in my box, man. And every time we get together to write our songs, immediate arguments. Immediate arguments. And what you get when you combine these two things, I think, is a hybrid, you know?
Yeah.
If everybody in the band, like some bands we might know, love Deep Purple, then you're going to sound like Deep Purple, right? If everybody says, fucking hey, I love Judas Priest, man. If everybody says that, I say, well, let's write a song like Judas Priest. Now let's write another. And everybody starts writing another. Pretty soon you sound just like whoever it is you're copying. Because I'm arguing, you know, I say, man, I can't dance to that. That's no good, man. It's not going to go anywhere. He says, well, if you quit sounding like that old black shit, you know, you wind up with a hybrid. Something that's a little more difficult to categorize.
Do you think it's important for you to keep the glimpse in your eyes and have good fun when you say all these things to the audience, when you perform these rock and roll excess things on stage?
I find that most performances that I see, and I go to see a lot of other bands, a lot of theater, you know, they reduce everything to strain. You know, when you strain and you get the veins going under the left ear, you know, and you go like that. And pretty soon everything becomes strain. You say, oh man, am I happy? You know, oh shit, am I angry now? You know, and everything becomes the same thing. God, do I feel sexy? And everything becomes like this. Well, people aren't like that, man. I'm not. You know, everything's going to be every song translates a little bit differently.
Do you think this rock and roll excess thing is a part of your personality? I mean,
I love to exaggerate. That's a natural thing for me.
Yeah.
And when you're dealing with more than 5,000 people, you can't use your eyebrows, you know, just to communicate an expression. In here, I can move my eyebrows, you know, look what happens. No, you know, you can do that. I can use my face close, but with over 10,000 people, then everybody, you know, you got to go to your elbows, man. You got to start using your knees like that. If you're happy, you know, what's up? You know, if you're sad, that's a very different emotion than this. You know?
what do you think about AC/DC and Motley Crue?
I have all the respect in the world for them. They play a certain kind of music. Each band plays their own specific kind of music, and they're pretty good at it.
Do you wear their music in your bag?
I'm sorry?
Do you wear their music on their cassette in your bag?
Do I have their music? Yeah, we have their music. In fact, we have a backstage stereo that's larger than most of their guitar equipment, and all of their tapes are in the back there. You can't name a band to me that if I'm familiar with them, there's at least one song, at least one performance value that you're going to like, that I'm going to like. I can always find something wrong, too. I can always find a crack under the woodwork.
Are you an entertainer or musician?
I'm a magician.
Okay.
The difference is I don't show you a mirrors and wires ever. It's like, seems like a lot of musicians are going to go on about, well, I'm a musician, not an entertainer, because they think an entertainer is something less.
Is it?
No, absolutely not. That's why it's a much older tradition than being a musician. Long, long before somebody ever hit a rock with a stick, there was somebody telling a story. You know, there's somebody relating a tale of the gods, or, you know, the Iliad, the Odyssey, whatever. Entertainer is a lot more than being a musician, only a musician. Because then you have a responsibility to not be boring. And if you're a musician, then you can make a rationale for being boring anytime you want. Instead, you can easily say, well, that's my music, baby. You don't like it, find somebody else. If you're an entertainer, your only responsibility is don't be boring. I think that's a little more difficult than just playing music.
Why if you are feeling a gap of the genre?
What gap?
80s.
What gap do you think that he's leaving? Yeah, something a little more
I
specific.
think it's finished in a way. At least there's something to be.
I don't think Mick Jagger is finished at all. If anything, he may be finishing himself. There's a difference. It's like the rock stars who died from drug overdoses and alcohol. They didn't die, they killed themselves. You see, there's a big difference there. And I think if he's, in fact, being finished, he's doing it to himself. See a lot of rock stars who are like in their late 40s and like that. They look old, they look dumb. It's because they're trying to act, perhaps, like something they aren't anymore. Like 15 years old. If you grow with it, you wind up like Tina Turner. How old is she? 50 now. 50? They just had Tina Turner Day in Los Angeles. Think they'll ever have Diamond Dave Day in Los Angeles? I doubt it.
Will you play when you're 50?
Oh, absolutely. James Brown is 57. He just broke with it. What is it? Africa, Bombada, you know, and whether you like the music or not, that's a moot point. The cat is current, and he's having a great time, and he's still paying the rent with his music, which is the whole idea.
Well, your latest record, you put a synthesizer in it.
Uh-huh.
Are you going to develop it? Are you later?
Edward goes to the music store like a lot of people do sports, at least twice a week. Okay, at least, a lot of things, at least twice a week. And whatever they have there, he'll buy it, and he'll take it home, and he'll play with it. And for the first time since the beginning of our recording career, we had a year that we could spend in the studio, just fooling around with new equipment. You can't buy a new drum machine or a new synthesizer or keyboard and just sit down and learn it in 2 months. If you do, you sound exactly like somebody else. You listen to a record, you go, that's the sound I want, you read it, you know, here's the setting, and you punch it in. You get a lot of music sounding the same because a lot of people don't sit down and fool around with it for a year. When you do, you wind up with what is junk for us, what is our weight for us. Given another space of time, then we'll come up with something even better, I would think.
Is Van Halen a marriage or a work constellation?
Or a what?
A working constellation.
The four of us have such very different personalities that when we're off the road, we do completely different things. This makes the arguments much more refreshing and much more productive. We run the band in true American democratic process, which means when they don't vote the way I want, then we vote again, and again, and again.
Why those long instrumental parts and solos in the Castle even?
Why?
Yeah.
Because I think, given not having control over the sound system and the lights and the video effects, because they were not ours, they belonged to AC/DC. Given that we did not have those controls, what would make us, what would show our personality off the best in terms of being different, in terms of what can we give you that is special from Van Halen, would be the things that glue each song together. Start playing a song, you know, if it's not your sound, if it's not your lights, it's going to be difficult to really separate each one and make each one sound like a different record entirely. In fact, most bands never even attempt that. Just bang out each song, each one sounds identical. With us, we have a virtuoso in the band. Edward Van Halen is a virtuoso. The kid was my fucking mentor years before I was even in the band. You know, even when we were back in junior high school, I don't know if you have that here, was I 14 years old? I used to see Edward playing at the school dance or something with his brother and some other people, and I would think, fuck, that's what I would like, what he does with his hands, I'd like to do with my pipes and my feet.
Get ready to dance, everybody, yeah.
Rock Commander is a celebration of rock and metal culture. Manage your own rock bands, connect with a passionate community, and experience exclusive collaborations with real bands like American Chaos and Adam and the Metal Hawks.
Eventually, we got together because we both were reaching for something, you know, beyond just copying a magazine or a look.
Here in Sweden, the main hard rock audience is around 15 years old. I don't know. I don't think it's like that in America. But why do you think it's nothing like that in Sweden? And they're mainly boys.
For hard rock?
Yeah.
Well, I think for heavy metal. Can I borrow a cigarette from you? That's your smoke, sir. What do you got? I think for heavy metal, most of the hard rock, and this is just my opinion, has nothing to do with what Van Halen thinks. Most of the heavy metal is like monster music for monster fans. You go to the monster movies, it's 14-year-old guys. That's what I used to go to. And you buy magazines, you look at every picture in the press of every heavy metal band, and every one of them's going, check it out, man. I should have brought a fucking paper with me. Every one of them. You know, and they're crawling on the ground. And they says, don't take a picture of me looking like that.
Have you got that?
Not really. You know, I can tolerate once, twice. Hey, let's get a third band that looks like that. But man, every single one was like, I'm going to tear your lungs out for $10. And that's what it is. They're getting strangled and fucked over, and every possible mask's being pulled out of their heads and strapped up. And half the lyrics are really sexist. Really, here's what I'm going to do to you tonight and do it again tomorrow. I ain't sexist. I believe completely in women's lib, equal rights. The worst I get, you can listen to all of the Van Halen lyrics, I view it as more of a sharing experience. It's, you know, even at my worst, it's like, but we're in this together.
Van Halen on the top now.
The top is in your head. People talk about money, fabulous money. You know, so-and-so sells 10 million records, so-and-so sells 30 million records. And what do you want out of life? You want a car? You want 5 cars? What do you want, a big house? You want to travel? Everything that I ever wanted, I'm very easily amused.
Do you have everything you want?
Oh, absolutely. I make my living singing and dancing. I get to use my brain as well as my creativity. Get to throw myself around to act out all my fantasies. And for the time being, people are having a good time with me while I'm doing it. I sell a lot of smiles. You know, hey, it looks good on you. You gotta wear it more often. No, that's my dream. That was always the rock and roll dream. So yesterday I had to do all these interviews. Excuse me 1 second. They have a bunch of interviews for me to do yesterday. It was nice. We outside, we went to the beach. You know, at first they're like, oh man, you know, I said, come, sit in my office. And I sat down, what was it? I don't know, big lake, about 15 minutes from here. I sit in the sun, there's pretty girls everywhere, you know. A couple of drinks, tell them what I think about everything.
Isn't there anything in life you have missed?
Absolutely. It's like ironic. It's a strange balance. When you first start out in rock music, you know, you put everything on the table. You say, I bet all my Friday and Saturday nights. I bet most of my social life. I bet my educational background. I bet my money, my entire life. Well, let me have that ashtray, thanks. I bet all the money in the world. I bet everything, my family life and a future, everything, that I'm going to make it in music. And you know how many people actually do. Maybe 1 in a million, 1 in 5 million. And if you should score, If you should win, become the 1 in 10 million who hits it, bam, around the world. Well, then all your friends who were back there in the beginning telling you when you put it all on the table, don't do it, stay in school, you don't know what you're doing, you're fucking yourself up. 9 out of 10 times they're right. Those people turn around, you just won, and they go, don't you feel overpaid for what you do, Dave? Don't you feel guilty about making so much money just for that kind of music? You know, and look at your social life, man. It's gone all out of hand, you know. They try and make you feel bad for it. You know, there's an interesting balance for that. At the same time, God comes down and he says, but you still lose everything on the table. All your Friday and Saturday nights, you know, everything turns differently.
What about practice? Now when you became a star, did you stop practicing your singing?
Never. Never. Even when I was off the road for the last 4 weeks before we came here, Edward was doing a soundtrack for a movie, and I was in New York playing around with different musicians, making demos for the band, for the next record. I write a lot of music, a lot of ideas, you know, always making noise, always making noise.
We got time for a question. Another question or two.
What film was he doing the track for? Edward.
I'm sorry?
What film was he doing the soundtrack for, Edward?
It hasn't come out yet. I don't. What's the title of Ed's movie? The Wildlife.
What's it about?
I have no idea.
Uh,
It's about 2 hours.
Why do you think hard rock has had its revival in Europe the recent years?
Once again, I'm sorry.
Why do you think the hard rock has its revival in Europe the recent years?
Hard rock never left. They said to me, Dave, now that hard rock is all out of style in 1978, we were playing loud music. There are a million bands around playing loud music, playing rock and roll, hard rock, heavy metal, any kind of rock you could think of. I said, well, what do you mean? They said, well, now the punk rock. The latest, the only thing. What about it? Punk rock came and went, and disco became the latest, heaviest thing in the very late 70s, down to summer and everything. It was the same thing.
Yeah. It's an old-fashioned hard rock then.
Oh, you mean like the Stray Cats?
No, I mean like Deep Purple and melodic.
They never left. They never left. I think a lot of people may have changed their styles and their haircuts and forgot about it for a while because they went to something different. Not better, not worse. They just moved to the side. They come back, they go, whoa. They think it disappeared because they weren't listening to it. I think.
You have covered yours by Roy Orbison and Ray Davis. Why just them? Why them?
Those were our best songs in the club days. We used to play them all the time, 3 times a night in places this size. You know, and don't forget Ladies Dance Contest every Wednesday night in 3 before 9, happy hour every Sunday from 8 in the morning till midnight. We'll be here next weekend after next. We'll be here for 4 weeks, in fact. Then another 4, and another 4. And here's another one. Let's get everybody on the dance. It's Ladies' Choice and play You Really Got Me. It was only natural that these songs would get back onto a record.
You still do gigs in small clubs, so just...
I much prefer, personally, the bigger show. Yeah. The sound is better. Yeah. The kind of show that is developing, that I do on stage physically, I think works much better on a big stage with a big audience and a big sound.
How do you go about when you write? How do you go about when you write the lyrics to the songs?
Well, people think I'm joking. Edward writes the music first in the studio. He'll come out after a week in the studio, and he'll have some music, and we'll work it into a framework, a skeleton of a song. And I get the cassette tape, and I have a big red car. It's convertible, big old Mercury. And I sit in the back seat, and my roadie Larry, who you'll see on stage, handing me the towels and doing the whole number, he drives. And we go around during the summer, during the hot months in California, and we drive around in the Hollywood Hills. You know, I take the shirt off and I sit in the back seat and I listen to the cassette again and again. And I write the words. And every hour or so, I lean over the seat and I say, Larry, what do you think? I read him the words. Larry tells me, well, Dave, I don't know if you had enough focus in the first verse.
How many hours can you drive around?
Well, for as long as it's hot outside. And if you listen to 1984, even though the music is longer, it's a longer record than we've made in a while, there are fewer lyrics on it. And that's because there was an early cold in the season in California, and I was on it.
Next question. Where do you get the inspiration from?
Inspiration comes from everywhere. You know, a lot of musicians seem to lock themselves up, you know, and have a difficulty communicating with people to begin with. So they communicate through an instrument. That's neither good nor bad. It's not me. By going out and doing all kinds of different things, you fill up your bucket. When it's time to do something on stage, when it's time to think of words or a scene or a scenario or a lyric, then you have your full bucket. I know a lot of musicians have empty buckets.
Okay. What have you been doing in Sweden since you arrived?
I brought my bicycles with me, and we bought a raft for the lakes just the other day, so we've been paddling around. I run every day. I've been about 12, 14 kilometers in every direction that you can think of. The common tourist things. Except McDonald's.
Why come you change the name in the early days to Van Halen?
It was my idea first, and let's consider the alternative. There was a song by Black Sabbath at the time that was popular back when called Rat Salad. And that's what the alternative was.
Well, why change the name from
I'm glad
Mammoth?
you agree, darling.
Your name was Mammoth, right?
There was another band named Mammoth. You know, you pick a name, the Electric Cloud, and one day you're driving down the street and you see the Electric Clouds are playing in the club. That's what happened.
And you were the latest, the at least known of these two, or one?
Oh, nobody knew of us at the time. We were just beginning in school. And there was another band who was much more popular named Mammoth. I think Van Halen includes a whole lot of different feelings to it as well. It's a name that could imply a lot of different kinds of music, a lot of different pretenses. Could be a classical musician, could be an opera star, could be a political figure.
What about Red Bull Jet?
Rebel Yell?
Jet.
I don't understand, I'm sorry.
You played in a band before called Red Bull Jets. Before
Sure.
Yeah.
That was the only rock and roll band I had been in before Van Halen. And just a dance band, playing at dances and weddings and little clubs. Not very good musically, but we sure looked good.
Yeah.
Okay, this. So one more? Anybody got one more?
What are your favorite vices?
My favorite writers? I mean,
Vices.
my favorite vices? Well, you know, you start out in a rock and roll band. Van Halen's been platinum for, 7 years now? And you start out doing everything you can think of. Twice a day. Some of them 3. And you do everything. Use up a lot of money doing it. Try all the vices. I personally now, after all these years, I've picked the 4 or 5 that I like the best, and I do only those. I spend all my money only on those. I think if you listen to the songs, you'll be able to pick them up instantly.
Mention your favorite writers also.
You mean literal?
Yes.
Literature?
Yes.
Mark Twain, Tom Wolfe, Voltaire. Well, Voltaire was an optimist. He said that we live in the best of all possible worlds. And me being a pessimist, I'm afraid he's right.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. See you on the weekend. Let me sign a couple of these. You should.